Okay, guys, welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're reflecting on how things are so polarized in this world after the Trump election, after many policies are being passed, tariffs, et cetera, et cetera. The question is, should you cut off the friends who don't share your beliefs? The question for you, Peter, how do you handle people who hate your perspective?
Yeah, this is a tough one because I feel like there's so many opposing beliefs right now. And my goal is not to cut off everyone that doesn't believe in what I believe. I feel like even you and I, we have opposing beliefs, right? But we're still able to remain friends. We're able to remain business partners. If we avoided everybody who didn't believe in what we believe, then we would not have many friends. We would have a pretty small network. And that's not my goal. I don't know about you, but I want to be able to connect with as many people as possible and be able to love as many people as possible, regardless of their beliefs. I also believe that it'll help me expand my understanding about the world by listening to people who have opposing beliefs, right? I mean, does that resonate with you?
Yeah, I think the world would be a very boring place if you just lived in a bubble, like an echo chamber. I think part of growing your own perspectives and beliefs is having opposing perspectives and beliefs.
Yeah.
If you never know the other side of the argument, how can you become whole, right? So when you are handling people who hate your perspective, could be in person, could be on social media, could be wherever. What are some frameworks that you think of on how to handle that?
Yeah, so I would say strategy is really key. Our goal is to be connected and stay friends, not necessarily just cut them off, right? And so I would say framing is really key. And so to start, begin in a friendly way. Start conversations positively. And then show respect for the other person's opinions. I think the first thing that you have to do is listen to the other person's perspective. Don't just try to shout out what you believe and what you heard on TikTok. Listen to their perspective because you may learn something. You may not necessarily believe in what they're saying. You may not necessarily agree with what they're saying. And yet having their opposing thoughts will help you grow expand your mind in about the topic. And so I would say don't ever say that you're wrong. People don't like to hear that word ever. And so don't do that. Don't tell people that they're wrong because that's immediately going to put people into the defensive, and that's not going to get you to where you want to be. So keep it positive. And remember, understanding opens doors that arguments leave shut. So you want to make sure that you want to come from a perspective of understanding, because if you're just trying to argue, if you're just trying to convert them to your thinking, then all you're going to do is make them more defensive, and you guys aren't going to get anywhere, and you're just going to further be apart from the relationship.
Yeah, I find that to really understand somebody's point of view, you have to dig deeper with some of these techniques that we may have talked about before. Some things I remember is trying to be objective instead of subjective. Yeah. Like instead of saying you think this or I think that, you are this way, you can reframe it as it sounds like this is your perspective, or, what's causing you to believe this. There are different ways for you to also stay emotionally grounded while digging deeper, because I also find that people have different stories of what makes them believe that certain thing. And we may not have experienced it in our lives. So what else do you think about?
And I think you said a really good point. Keep your emotions in check, because if you don't, that's when the arguments go sideways, right? That's when the conversation goes sideways. I think people are so emotionally charged when it comes to some of these various topics that as soon as that emotion comes in, we talked about this in our previous podcasts, where if you get above a certain beats per minute in your heart rate, you start getting angry or feeling whatever emotions that will make you start becoming start saying things that you don't want to say. You start attacking the person, right? Out of just that anger. You start saying things that you don't want to say. And that's going to lead to, you just hurting each other. And again, that's not the point, right? We want to listen to each other. We want to keep the relationship. People are more than just their opinions about a topic, right? They're real people inside. And the person is good. But we have to just make sure that we're not attacking each other, because that could lead to just a whole bunch of pain.
I agree.
And so I would really try to avoid arguments. You don't have to be in an argument. I'm in quite a lot of social situations. We're also in the business of real estate. So we talk to a lot of people, a lot of clients. We talk to a lot of different personalities, perspectives, experiences. But our goal is not to necessarily just not work with people who we disagree with. Our goal is to connect with someone, listen to their perspective, and just trying to argue is just going to make it a lot worse. And so coming from that perspective of what I would do is ask a lot of questions, keep asking questions. Oh, why do you believe that? I used to work with homeless people. And one of the things that I've experienced with homeless people is a lot of them aren't in their right mind. My goal is I wanted to connect with these people, but they, because they're not in their right mind, they say the craziest things. I've heard things like aliens are taking over. They're hiding in between humans, and they're trying to, they try to take my family away from me. I've heard that. These are real stories. And I would listen to them. I can choose to be like, hey, you're wrong. That's not true. Come on, that didn't really happen. I can choose to go that route, immediately would put them into the defensive. They'll walk away from me and get angry, right? That's what everybody does. And yet what I did in that kind of situation is I just listened to them. Oh, really? So aliens try to take your family. Oh, interesting. Why do you think that? Start asking questions, and then you start realizing how they came to that perspective. You're not necessarily agreeing with them. You're just asking them questions on how they came to that conclusion. I think that's going to be a lot more effective than, obviously just trying to argue.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things I've experienced, just to piggyback on the emotion side, is sometimes people say things and state things that are opinions like fact. And they say it with such confidence that it causes kind of an emotional stirring inside you. And then your heart rate starts to go, and you know that everything that's coming after that is probably not the best for your outcome.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that the society that we live in, we have to leave room to be in disagreement, but to still remain friends or work buddies or even husband and wives, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, imagine you're trying to get married to somebody and you're getting to know them, and then you have like a fundamental difference in belief. I mean, sometimes you can choose to say, hey, this person, again, you're kind of judging the person, is so-and-so versus, oh, her or his belief is so-and-so. So I think keeping the emotion out of it is something that's very important to do.
Yeah, with husband and wives, like, we have different perspectives. And I think this mindset of, this is my beliefs, and I'm going to stick with it, and you're wrong, is so destructive on all relationships. If we did that to our wives, where we're like, our beliefs are our beliefs, and that is final, and that is truth, are we going to be able to stay with our wives?
No, yeah. I mean, my wife is Chinese. I'm Korean. We're Korean. And then also I grew up more Christian versus, my wife's, being a Buddhist family.
Yeah.
And even just talking about how to raise our kids, what are our daily routines, what are our beliefs? Once you start peeling that back, there's going to be differences. And I think we all need, and that's what we harp on all these techniques, the FBI people, or all the negotiations that we've talked about on this podcast. If you can hold on to some of those techniques, it'll help you keep or be objective in your conversations with people.
Yeah, and it could also help you with tact, framing. Delivery is key. especially when talking with your wife or really anybody, you have to deliver it very well. You have to deliver it very humbly. You have to deliver it from not a matter of fact, but you have to deliver it from like a questioning and just, seeking more understanding, right? And so not like shouting at them, because if I'm shouting at you, John, and I'm saying, John, you're wrong, blah, 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 whatever the content is, if I'm shouting at you, you're not going to receive it well, right? But if I'm coming in with like a soft-spoken, humble, again, the head tilt, right? What we talked about in our previous podcasts, the way I deliver will really, really affect the results. And that's something that Rebecca does well with me, is she delivers it so well. She frames it with, I'm sorry, but this is the way it makes me feel. And it just like immediately puts me in a different like mindset. And so delivery, again, key. Facial expressions are key, in my opinion. You have to, don't be like this, like when they're talking. Facial people 100% are seeing what you're doing. You're not being subtle about it. And so when you're like this, right, you're really listening versus like kind of giving them these facial expressions. It's only going to make them even more angry or more defensive. So anyway, techniques that I've learned, over the few years I've been alive.
Can you share a recent difference in perspective that you guys have had between you and your wife?
Between Rebecca and I,
or anybody for that matter. Could be work, could be family.
Yeah. Okay. We're gonna talk about this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's share. It's sharing time.
Yeah. Some people have certain perspectives on abortion.
Oh.
Okay.
All right. Here we go.
And here's the thing: this person who's close with me, I have a lot of people who has a certain belief on abortion. Yeah. This person has a certain belief on abortion. I have a certain belief on abortion. We're opposing in our thoughts, right? The last interaction I had, I actually learned something about abortion. I learned, kind of what's happening in the hospital systems, what's happening, with kids who are unwanted, and the what happens to them in foster care and all of that. I still don't agree with it. Okay, I don't agree. Yet I learned more about the subject, and I did state, right, what my beliefs were, because they didn't necessarily change my beliefs, but I wanted to state kind of what I believed about the subject based off what I know. Now, there are times like I feel like I am humble enough to be able to listen to what they're saying and be open to being wrong. Honestly, be open to a different perspective on the subject. I have yet to have someone change that belief. I also come from a kind of a different paradigm, right? So I am a Christian. And so as a Christian, I run off certain principles. I run off, like, it goes deeper, right, than just the subject itself. So as a Christian, I may see things in a certain way, right? And so again, what I did was we didn't argue per se. I was just listening to more of what they were saying. I also stated my beliefs, and I think that's the other thing. We have to be able to say our beliefs without letting it elevate to arguments. And we should be able to remain friends, right?
So that reminds me of another question, which is, in these disagreements or different perspectives, should you stay silent about your beliefs? How do you approach letting the other person know about your beliefs? Is it better to be outspoken and have an argument, or is it better to just kind of kill that part of you for the sake of peace? Like, what's the balance there?
I think there's a time and place. So that's number one. I would try to time it so if you've been just arguing about political beliefs, like every interaction that you have, I don't think that's actually strategic or that's helpful, because you're just elevating and elevating and elevating. I think there has to be, like John Gottman says, you have to have 20 affirmations, like 20 positives versus one bid. There's got to be a ratio to it, right? So you got to, affirm, and then ask for one thing. I think in the same light with arguments, I think we have to be careful of just, like having every interaction be an argument. But if the time is right, if the time and place are right, again, there's some prefaces, right? Like you have to do certain things before you go into your perspective. To answer your question, yes, I believe you should be able to talk about your perspective. And if you have this person who is unwilling to hear your side at all, I don't believe that person is a person willing to be a friend. Because again, love is something love is selfless, right? It's a selfless act. It is an act though. And by listening to you, even though I don't necessarily want to hear it, is an act of love. And if the other person's not willing to do that for you, do you really want to remain friends with someone who is like that? Right? So I would say that'd be one thing. So once you've fully heard their perspective, I would try to get to a common ground with this other person, right? Because you may be surprised on how many things you have in common, how many beliefs you have in common. A lot of it is a difference in method. It's a difference in methodology, right? So, for example, like we all want to have a peaceful world, 100%. You and I both want to have a peaceful world, but we might have different perspectives, right? I think to establish our common ground of, hey, let's just have love permeate the world. Let's just kind of establish that and remind ourselves that we kind of have that common ground. Try to find that common ground. Yeah, I do believe in that. I do agree with you on this point. I think that's important. And then once you do that, then you deliver your perspective. And again, delivery is key. The way you frame it, the way you say it, your facial expressions, the tone of your voice, the calmness of your voice, I think is very important. But then when you say it, stop talking in terms of like a matter of fact. Like, this is the truth. This is what it is. Because you have to be humble, right, in life about how you receive the world. There's so much that you don't know, but we are so arrogant in believing that we know so much. Even me, like I do a ton of research on a bunch of things, but I'm still in the perspective of I just don't know. In fact, one of the most successful people that I know, the most smartest people that I know are surprisingly way more humble than you may know. A lot of the most successful people actually they even though they're confident in when they speak, they're also very receiving of listening to different perspectives. For example, I had a client probably worth $200 million. I came in thinking that he would just be a know-it-all. He had a totally different approach. He was actually, especially to his advisors, and I was one of the advisors because I helped him buy like a $27 million building. He actually asked a lot of questions, a lot more questions than I thought he would. And so I think that's the perspective we should have. We should have the perspective of just, the humility. This is just what I feel. Like, based off my experiences, this is what I think, rather than this is what it is, because I think that's such an arrogant approach.
Yeah, that reminds me of a story of somebody, purchasing a dinner opportunity with Warren Buffett, one of the best, one of the most well-known investors in our time. He went in there. He had a whole script of all the questions he was going to ask Warren Buffett and pick his brain. And then at the end of the dinner, he realized Warren Buffett asked way more questions than he could ask him.
Oh,
right?
wow.
Even at his level. I mean, we're talking 12 figures, right? And
12 figures.
I mean,
That doesn't.
It doesn't compute. And that really is very illustrative of how the best, just like you said, the best people are sometimes the most humble, because you wouldn't have gotten to that place without being humble and asking people questions.
Yep.
So you're saying that do present your beliefs, but in a way that allows you to maintain that relationship and give a perspective based on your experiences and try to find out the other person's perspective and also try to find common ground. If you do that and it still doesn't work, the next question would be, if you get to a certain point where you can't come to a common ground with this person, maybe you've tried for days or weeks or months, how do you make that decision of whether or not to continue? Should you cut off your friends, or should you cut them off as friends who don't share your perspectives or beliefs? Where is that? Because that's a gray area for me.
It's a tough one, and this is my opinion.
Your opinion?
My perspective.
Not a fact? Okay.
This is not truth or fact. This is just the way I kind of frame my life. And my goal, again, my life goal is to connect with as many people as possible. My life goal is to love as many people as possible. And so I make that, I make that supersede a difference in opinions, if that makes sense. But is there a point where the other person just believes, first of all, will they cut you off? Because there are people who will cut you off because you have different beliefs. Like, let's just say, I'm not saying I'm a Trumper, okay? But let's just say I was a Trumper. If someone is willing to cut me off from their life because I'm a Trumper, maybe we shouldn't have been friends. That's my opinion. If I was but let me switch this so the internet doesn't go crazy. If I was a big left Biden guy or whatever, would people on the right cut me off because of my beliefs? And I think that is something that people have to be really careful of, because if the world, this is the biggest problem right now in the world, is that, especially here in America, is the polarity that's happening between us. We have different perspectives based off, quite honestly, what we watch on our social media feeds. Mm-hmm. It's a revolving loop. We watch what we want to watch, all the conspiracy theories. Oh, here's what the left is doing. Oh, look at Elon Musk. He does the, Hitler sign, right? The
salute, yeah.
The salute, right? But then I've also seen, the left and a bunch of them doing the same thing. Or it's just quite honestly, we can't just break relationships just because we have a differing opinion, right? And so will they cut you off? I think that's number one. And if they do, I think it's okay. I think you should just move on to people who are a lot more humble, right? Approach about life. And then secondly, again, I would choose the relationship. People are more than their opinions, right? They're people behind them. And, but I honestly believe that if you have people who are just unwilling to listen to your perspective and just so opposing and so angry at your perspective, I question whether these are people. I get the passion. Passion is good, right? But then if they're so unwilling to hear your perspective, I question whether that's a relationship I want to be a part of. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. I think you have to have a detachment from the person and their beliefs. And what I've realized in my experiences is that somebody has a personal reason for why they believe in something. It's usually tied to a life experience or a culture or their upbringing. And the more you dive deeper into that emotion and where it's coming from, that's where the common ground comes from. Because common ground to me isn't necessarily having the same type of pain, but it's the fact that we all have pain, that we learn from different experiences. Our parents were there or not there, or I grew up this way or this part of the country, like I grew up in Hawaii versus Washington. And all these things, our education system, and I love the fact that you mentioned social media, because if you study, so like the documentary on Netflix, Social Dilemma, I think we touched on this before. The algorithm is made to produce an echo chamber.
Yes.
There's a reason why your feed on YouTube looks much different than my feed on YouTube.
Yeah.
And the algorithm is so smart because it will literally learn who you are and just feed you more of that. You know, it's kind of like a mom just continuing to just pour love and support on a kid, even though that kid might not be going the right direction. Oh, yeah, this is who you are. This is more of who you should be. And we don't have as much muscle, mental muscle in seeing two opposing views, having debates, you know. So anyway, we can go on for that forever, but I think people should allow themselves a little bit of mercy to know that we are in this digital world through Facebook, through X/Twitter, YouTube, and the comments are where a lot of this stuff lives, is these echo chambers that continue to echo what people are already thinking inside their heads. So when we get to a real conversation with people, sometimes we haven't, you know, the muscle to disagree in peace has been weakened. That's what I see. So I find myself getting emotional and my heart rate going up, and I'm already knowing that, hey, this is not going to end well. And some of these techniques that we talked about, I think, can come to play, such as digging deeper, you know, figuring out the why, like what makes you think this way? What are your experiences? So
I just want to comment on that. I definitely agree about the social media and the opposing, you know, points. It's like we're just watching the points of what we have already, you know, kind of believed in, and it's just reaffirming. But the feed is not, you know, obviously designed to get us to hear opposing perspectives. And so that makes us short-sighted. That makes us very tunnel visioned on a broader perspective that we really should have, right? So if I say I'm a Christian and I just keep to, I'm just a Christian, is that really the right way to approach Christianity, right? Why not at least hear what Buddhists have to say? Why not hear what a Muslim has to say? Why not hear? You know what I'm saying? Like I think we should be a lot more broader in our perspective. Listen to people, and I think what you said was really interesting. You know, I have a friend who is a doctor, and he has seen a ton of people die because of COVID. He has had to cut people's legs off because of COVID.
Sure.
He literally saw people on ventilators and pass away.
Yep.
And that's what he saw every single day during the peak of COVID. And then you have other people who don't see all of that, and they are like, oh, anti-vaxxers, we shouldn't be taking the vaccines. COVID doesn't do anything. It's all lies. It's just like the flu, right? I'm not going to tell you my perspective on that. I could be either way. And to be honest, I'm still in a place where I'm just like, I don't want to have a perspective. I just want to hear both sides, because everybody has their own experiences. And I think we should focus on pursuing the experiences. Why do they believe this? It'll be so good for us to broaden our knowledge by understanding their experiences. I agree with you. I think it's just so important to dig that out of people to broaden our knowledge.
The one thing I see you doing really well with people is, you know, how to default to relationship maintaining and building over the argument, right? So if for those of us, you know, who are listening to this and maybe thinking, man, I would really like to have a better way to disagree with people, or to put forth my opinions or perspectives. I think the cardinal rule here is practice just understanding where people are coming from as a baseline. You don't even have to win that argument or come out of it, except to understand where they came from at a deeper level, because that is the fundamental building block of, okay, this is what you're saying based on these reasons and experiences. And now I see that you have kind of formulated your opinions because of these things. Am I right or am I wrong?
Yeah.
And then when people say that's right, you'll literally see people kind of calm down, their heart rate goes down, their shoulders relax. That's maybe where things can start. But without even getting there, I think that's the first step.
100%. 100%. Yeah. I think the question is then, just to kind of finish off, is there a point where we do cut someone off of our lives?
I think I have challenges related to this. Is I'm not so black and white in the way I think, for better or worse. And I do have to be careful to establish my own boundaries, to be able to have my own opinion, and because I don't want to let people down or have them not like me, which is kind of a human thing. Sometimes I kind of blur the lines of where I should maybe take a stand. But I think even that, to relate back to what you said, has to do with, is the other party giving you a chance to speak and be listened to as well?
Yeah.
Because it can't just be a one-way relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said in the beginning, we've had disagreements, and we will. That's just kind of the nature of being a partner and being friends. But because we listen to each other and allow things to kind of simmer, and for things that are the most important to float up to the surface, I think that's where the growth is. But there is definitely a cutoff when you can't let your energy be sucked away by somebody who is in a place at that moment in time who just takes and doesn't give back. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
That's a good one. Energy protection is so important, especially in this society.
Yeah.
And we just don't have the margin. We think we do, but we don't have the margin to be able to just give our energy away like that. Because what that does do is it not only affects ourselves, it affects our family. It affects the way how we come to our kids. It affects the way how we come to our wives. And so it is very important. And so I agree. I think there are actually times where you can cut off a particular person. I think when the person is, like you said, someone who just does not listen to you, or just states his point, is stubborn about their point, and just not willing to hear your side, I think that's an energy sucker, and I think it's better for you to just part your ways. There's also particular beliefs and values that are so different from yours. Most of the time, 90% of the time, it's fine. But there are beliefs that could be so opposing to yours, that you so are against, that if you guys aren't able to come to a conclusion here, it might actually be better for you to cut off the relationship. For example, let's just say I had a friend who came to me and said, hey, I just want to cheat. I want to cheat on my wife. I want to leave my kids, right? I just want to do that. Are you here with me? Are you going to support me? No, I'm not. And I believe by you cutting off that relationship, it's actually doing something helpful to them, because you're not enabling them to continue on a path that will lead to self-destruction. And so I've had to actually do this with friends. I have talked to them many times, because you got to tell them, at the very least, you have to talk to them and let them know. Most people are not willing to do that. Most people don't want that uncomfortable conversation or that confrontation. But the loving person is going to talk to you about the particular problem that they feel, out of their best interest and out of pure love, they should change in their lives for their betterment. But if the person's just not willing to change that particular behavior or that belief that we know is really bad, then sometimes it's better for you to just cut them off. That's my opinion. Just to make sure that they understand. They have to feel some kind of pain. Like there are people who hit rock bottom, and that's what sparks the change. But you don't get that rock bottom when sometimes there are friends who just keep trying to hold you up unhealthily, saying, oh, it's okay to, continue drinking and partying and ruining your life. Oh, it's okay to do drugs and do all this. Oh, it's okay to cheat on your wife and, just leave your family. Oh, there are friends like that. And those aren't real friends. Real friends who genuinely care will tell you the truths that you don't want to hear. And so, yeah, I think it's more loving to actually cut off the relationship. Plus, it protects your energy.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, you have to be strong to make sure you are not an enabler and to turn somebody into a victim. And that's where you don't have to be loud about it. You don't have to shout to them or berate them, put them down. Because at the end of the day, it's not the person, it's the belief. And it's okay to cut yourself off from that belief system that's not serving anybody. And to do it in a respectful and humane way, right? You don't have to blow up everything, your relationship, to end that. You can just peacefully disconnect from that. And that is a form of drawing a boundary. And like you said, I just don't have energy to, my kids are important. My wife is important. If I can't be rested and have peace and have people who listen to me and vice versa in my life, I can't serve the people that I need to on a high level as well. So
right.
I think those are really good points.
Right. Yeah.
Any other final thoughts before we wrap it up?
I just encourage people to do things that they don't want to do, because that's where the most amount of success comes from. And so even to be able to have these uncomfortable conversations, even to love them by hearing them on things that you don't want to hear, on perspectives that you don't want to hear, is an act of love. And I would encourage people to do that because it's good for the soul. It's actually good for you to do things like that. And it's good for other people to be heard because people want to be heard. They want to get their perspectives heard. And if you ever want to change somebody's perspectives, you have to do these protocols that we just talked about. Make sure that they are understood, right? Before you give your perspective. That's the only way I've seen it amicably, people change their perspective. They need to feel like they're loved and they're understood before you can change people's minds about anything. So high encouragement, something we need so much here in America, honestly, right?
Yes.
Like we're so polarized and so many friendships have been destroyed through this whole COVID mess, through abortion, through, trans, homosexuality, like all this, all these topics that, I get you have different perspectives based off your experiences, but if we're just cutting everybody off from our lives because of this, man, how are we going to run as a country? Why can't we just unify, and, two heads are better than one, right? So if we unify, we could do so much more. So that would be my last statement.
I think that's a good way to end it. Again, I just encourage people to think that your perspectives, you really have to question your own perspectives because many times it's not actually your own. It's parents, culture, society, social media that's putting those things within you. And to study the history of marketing and these algorithms, they're literally people getting paid top dollar. They have research firms and departments that figure out how to change your beliefs. And sometimes it's not your own. So once you question those beliefs, is it really mine? Is it actually serving the highest good? That's where you can have some changes. So yeah, love it.
Okay, well, thank you guys for watching. The very few of you guys who are, for anybody who has made it to this end of the video, we just encourage you to like this video and subscribe. We're just starting out here on YouTube, and so we really do appreciate you helping us with the algorithms. Speaking of algorithms.
Yes.
Yeah.
Use it for good.
Use it for good. Okay, thank you guys. We'll see you guys next time.
All right, thank you.